Today, I'm going to talk to you about marriage and how marriage was never about love. This may be a controversial episode. And also, I think it's appropriate because behind me, as I talk about marriage, there's a collection of drawings from my 4.5-year-old, keys, a coffee pot. The environment, instead of being in my studio, is very, I don't know what the word is because I'm inside my house, picket fence, domestic. Um, and by the way, that image of marriage, I would like to shatter because, again, I think it's an old blueprint. I'm inside because if you live in Los Angeles, you can drive 20 minutes and the temperature can go from fuck my life, why am I here, to, oh, this is pleasant. I love Los Angeles. I mean, a 30-minute drive, because we live up in the hills, North Pasadena, and it gets triple digits. It gets way too hot. But if I drive about 30 minutes, if I drive to, Culver City, it's perfect. It's like 77 with a breeze. LA just has a lot of patches of different weather. But it makes sense because it also has a lot of patches of different culture. Like you could drive 30 minutes and be in a very high, like a very high-end neighborhood, and then or drive 30 minutes and be in a very dangerous neighborhood. Anyway, let's talk about marriage. Okay, many people think that I am against marriage because I went through a divorce, which was one of the greatest catalysts to it started everything, right? It was the first domino. And because I went through a divorce, people think that I'm like anti-marriage. And that's not true. I think marriage can be a beautiful collaboration. I'm actually pro marriage. I'm gonna get married again for the second time in about 5 months. But it's gonna be very different. It's gonna be very different because I'm different. My thoughts on marriage is different, and that's kind of what I wanted to share with you today. So I'm working on a book, and it's tentatively called Loving on Purpose. My whole On Purpose brand is anything intentional, right? I don't like the word loving. It might be called Love, period, on purpose, period. But I have done some research. Shout out to Dessa, by the way. She helped me she's helping me research for this book. And there's a part in my book about how love was never about marriage. And I just think this is, it's one of those things that we should all know, but we don't. And I don't know about you, but it changed my perspective, my opinion, my views on marriage. So I wanted to actually let me read it to you because I think it's better that I read it because instead of rambling, I actually put thought into what I'm going to say. Okay, let me find it. 1 second. Here it goes. Okay. Marriage was never about love. The origins of marriage. The concept of marriage is 4,350 years old. The first recorded marriage dates back to 2,350 BC in Mesopotamia. Sounds made up. Sounds like Middle Earth, right? It's an area that was now modern-day Iraq. In the next several hundred years that followed, marriage evolved and became an institution taken by Hebrews, Greeks, and Romans. But back then, marriage had little to do with love or religion. Families were believed to be loosely organized groups of up to 30 people, right? This is when we lived more communal lives. And it had several male leaders. Man, I can't imagine having several male leaders. I wonder if they got into fights. You know what I'm talking about? Like I'm imagining like lions, t- I, I was gonna say what's the word? Territorial. I was gonna say territorial, but I said that was testosterone is what kind of came out of my mouth. But I guess the testosterone leads to more being territorial. Anyway, several male leaders, multiple women shared by them, and children. Early marriages primarily, God, as I'm thinking about this, holy shit. So this is like poly. This is this is like a lot of things we're exploring now, like a love cult. Um, there had to have been so much drama. I mean, sharing. I mean, I'm just saying this because back then there wasn't psychology and wellness and self help. People didn't have therapists back then or coaches to guide them through all the activation that comes up when you are sharing partners and loving multiple people. They didn't have that, right? So it must have been just instinctual and like territorial. Anyway, early marriages primary purpose was to bind women to men. Through marriage, a woman became a man's property. Men wanted children that were deemed "quote unquote" legitimate, and a guarantee that his children were in fact his biological heirs for inheritance purposes. So, in the ceremony of ancient Greece, a father would hand over his daughter with these words: "I pledge my daughter for the purpose of producing legitimate offspring." Once men owned women through marriage, right? So in these days, marriage was about ownership. He could expect them to produce offspring. If she didn't, then husbands could trade them in for someone else. It was like women were like automobiles, you know? You could trade them in. Wives were required to stay home and tend to the household, whereas men had freedom to satisfy their sexual urges, which were satisfied in a few different ways. Through concubines, a sexual relationship with another woman with no intent to marry, right? This is just a physical act. Often this woman would live with a man but have lower status than a wife or wives. It's almost like I guess it's like a mistress, but then she's living with you, but she's also like a side piece. Man, imagine that person, how that must have felt. Prostitutes and teenage male lovers. Little twist, right? Then we enter religion, which surprisingly involved women's experiences. Oh, which surprisingly improved women's experiences with marriage. So in Europe, when the Roman Catholic Church became powerful, the blessing of a priest became becoming required for marriage to be legally recognized, right? So within the religious tie, men were taught to show more respect for their wives as they could no longer divorce them. Basically, religion said, okay, you guys have to now be together forever. You guys are stuck, so you better learn how to make it work. Christian doctrine: the twain shall be one flesh. Basically, that both husband and wife had equal access to each other's bodies. This may point to the beginning of what we know today as enmeshment and codependency and many other unhealthy patterns commonly seen in romantic partnerships. Men now felt new pressure from religion to remain sexually faithful. However, men were still deemed head of the household, and wives were expected to follow the man's lead. Finally, romantic love enters the picture. Many scholars point to the troubadours of the 12th century France as influential figures in shaping our modern ideas of romantic love. These poets and writers often emphasize themes of courtly love, which involved admiration, devotion, and sometimes even unrequited longing for a noble lady. A noble lady. Men were encouraged to express their love through poetic gestures and praise of a woman's beauty and virtues. Similarly, women were often portrayed as objects of admiration, with their flirtatious glances and actions serving as signs of their own affection in return. This cultural phenomenon had a significant impact on art, literature, and societal norms surrounding relationships, and it continues to influence our understanding of romantic love today. It's interesting that how the creation of romance bled into art, and then I mean, it makes sense, I guess, because it's a mindset, it's a way of living, and then of course, art, literature is reflecting those times and the way that we lived. There emerged a notion that men should serve and cherish the women they loved, elevating her to a position of admiration and importance. However, the idealized view of love didn't translate into equitable relationships as patriarchal structures persisted. The legal and societal norms in early American history reinforced the husband's authority over his wife and household. This included the expectation that a woman would adopt her husband's last name, symbolizing her subordination and her identity becoming absorbed into his. Is my partner adopting my last name? I don't know. Well, it's I don't even think we talked about that. So our daughter, her last name is Bennett Kim because my partner is Bennett and my last name is Kim. And I'm gonna leave it up. I'm gonna leave it up to her. It doesn't really impact me one way or the other. I think it's her decision, her choice. Now, secretly, and I don't know if this is a healthy or unhealthy place or how much of it is formed from the stuff that we're talking about today. Yeah, there's something about her taking my last name, or at least adopting it, combining it with hers, that makes me feel like she's in it, And I don't know. I'm thinking about this. I don't know if that's like coming from a healthy place or if it's coming from a possession or property place, right? Maybe subtly underneath, like not like on the surface. It would just make me, I think, feel good. I think also because I'm 51, I have like one foot in the old school, That being said, I'm totally okay if she doesn't. I really am. I think when I first got married at 29, yes, I would have been insulted. I would have been like, this is what you're supposed to do. You are my wife. Your name should be blah, 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 Kim. And she did take my last name, but she was also Christian. And, I think she was also conforming to religious beliefs as well. Anyway, but if an American woman married a foreign non-American man, she would immediately lose her citizenship. So lots of racism back then. Okay, a shift occurred when hunter-gatherers became farmers. Society then had a need for more stable family arrangements. Now marriages were formed for more practical reasons, right? Still less about love and more about survival. Then another shift happened when women won the right to vote. When that happened in 1920, the institution of marriage began a dramatic transformation. Suddenly, each union consisted of two full citizens, although tradition dictated that the husband still ruled the house. By the late 1960s, state laws forbidding interracial marriage had been thrown out, and the last states had dropped laws against the use of birth control. By 1970s, the law finally recognized the concept of marital rape, which up to that point was inconceivable, as a husband, quote unquote, owned his wife sexually. Can you believe that? It wasn't until the 70s that marital rape, which is abuse, horrific abuse, that was even recognized. According to historian Stephanie Coontz, author of The Way We Never Were, American Families and the Nostalgia Trap, the idea that marriage is a private relationship for the fulfillment of two individuals is really new. Within the past 40 years, marriage has changed more than in the past 5,000. Isn't that crazy? Marriage is like tech. You know what I'm saying? Like tech, the hockey stick of tech, how we went from pagers to dial-up to, broadband, and now AI. That hockey stick, I think it's similar with marriage, where it's like for 5,000 years, it was so prehistoric. And then in the last 40, especially I think the last 10, 5 relationships in general, they've really evolved, and now it's about customization. Everything's questioned, and if it works for you, right? So real quick, although today there are many relationship models, people are still exploring, not just marriage. Marriage is still, I think, in my opinion, this is me writing this, in protective glass. right? Well, we can fuck with non-monogamy and polygamy, polygamy, polyamory, and open and all these, but we don't fuck with marriage, right? Marriage is off limits. If you want to experiment, go ahead, but once you get serious, you exchange vows under God and pledge till death. Marriage means the painting is framed. No more splattering paint. It's time to hang it in the living room because there are kids to feed and a lawn to mow. I think, and I think we need to change this, but I think marriage still represents happy. I think these beliefs are ingrained, they're baked in, passed down from generations, and so because that's what we've been fed, right? And like marriage is the end game. It's where happily ever after lives. My 4.5-year-old is obsessed with Disney, like all kids our age, and all these fairy tales, all the what is it, the Sleeping Beauty, and the whole, you find love and then you're happy, that whole messaging. Marriage is when we finally grow the fuck up and start building a meaningful life. Or at least that's the blueprint that has been passed down, the unconscious billboard we drive by daily. And yet, according to the American Psychological Association, approximately 40 to 50% of first marriages end in divorce. I'm definitely included in that. I'm thinking about all the people I know. And yeah, I would say flip a coin. Take anyone who's married, flip a coin, and 50% of them are divorced, right? The divorce rate for second marriages is even higher. And this is kind of shocking because I feel like after the first marriage, at least for me, I feel like I've grown. And I feel like this second marriage is going to have a lot stronger of a chance because of just us having more tools and just, having more wisdom and just life skills, understanding relationships. I get not everyone is marrying a therapist, but just in general. And by the way, I say that and also say that therapists are just as fucked up as everyone else. Just because you can help someone with their problems doesn't mean that you don't struggle with your own, right? So the divorce rate for second marriages is even higher. It's 60 to 67% of second marriages end in divorce, and then 70% of marriages are filed by women. And here's an interesting stat. This increases to 90% if we only focus on college-educated women. So 90% of college-educated women are filing for. So out of the 70% of women filing for divorce, 90% of that 70% is college-educated women. Right? Yes. Anyway, going back to how I started this episode, I'm not against marriage. I think marriage can be one of life's most beautiful collaborations. I'm actually, like I mentioned, getting married in about 5 months. Many may assume that because I went through a divorce, I don't believe in marriage anymore. That is not true. It will just be a different type of marriage, more customized to us and who we are today, without the clock, strong shoulds, and residue of generations past. Vanessa and I went backwards. First the kid, then the house, and now the wedding. More of a celebration than tying, quote unquote, a knot. And for us, it worked better this way. It took the pressure off to run toward any fence. Gave us a runway to work through our shit and build something that actually has a chance. No white dresses or bridesmaids. And this, by the way, is our choice. No altar, no stretch limousines trailed by empty soda cans. No inviting every single friend and family member we know, whether we like them or not. No forced speeches, overpriced cake. We're not going to freeze and eat a cake a year from now. I think that's weird. Eating a stale cake to celebrate your 1 year. I don't know where that tradition came from, by the way. And no forever promises, right? No languages like tying knots or till death. Let's get fucking real. This isn't a Disney movie. Instead, a simple celebration of love. A simple celebration of the love we have built and who we've become and are becoming because of that love. Less weight on the past or future and more on the now, today, who we are today, not who we could be, with the understanding that no one owes each other anything. We are together by choice, a daily one, celebrating the lowercase us as a couple, but also the capital us as individuals. No, the union isn't the capital, although that's what the world wants us to think because it sells more chocolates. Although love can be greater than its parts, the individual as a whole person is required for that love to become greater. For the relationship to have legs, each individual must be able to stand alone first. And when we're able to do that, the love grows and heals us and ripples outward, impacting others around us. So we're finally celebrating the around us, our close friends and family who supports and champions us, both as a couple and as individuals who have contributed to this creation. And now this creation contributes to them and their journey as well. So we're celebrating basically the circle of love. Simple. We're going to have fish tacos, a great playlist, the ocean, drinks with umbrellas, a live acoustic band playing 90s music. If I could help it, some 80s music as well. And room for some breath, magic, and meaningful connection. Oh, and perhaps some breakdancing. Actually, scratch that. I usually breakdance at every wedding, and I think on my own wedding, I think it's the first time I'm not going to do windmills. Anyway, we'll see. There's going to be a lot of pressure for me too. I know it. Okay, hey, here's my speech. Now I'm getting very personal. I have been here before, the first time on a farm in Oregon, in front of a sea of white people with church songs and prayers and violins. The perfect setup for the frame-worthy wedding photos. Shirt tucked in, shiny polished shoes, and in reflecting back, two scared kids who thought love meant exchanging rings for truth. But today, in Mexico, we're doing it in Mexico, obviously, with less white people and replacing, there's going to be white people there, just less, that's all, and replacing a pastor I had never met for a world champion spoken word poet who once did a TED Talk about air. Yes, my friend Buddy Wakefield. But most of all, nothing about till death. Instead, for life, a celebration of it, not only our love, but the love around us, our friends, you guys, because marriage isn't just about two people. It's about the love created by two people's lives, and our friends are included in that. So in a way, and I'm holding up my margarita glass, we are all getting married today. That's my speech. What do you think? Anyway, my value of marriage hasn't changed, only my definition has. And the point of this episode isn't to convince you of anything. It's just to, if anything, it's just to challenge you to turn rocks over, to question definitions. I think whether we're talking about marriage or definitions of happy, success, everything should be questioned because as you evolve, your truth changes, and how much of what you're carrying as far as your definitions are tied to not your truth, but society from the past, from parents, from friends. I think it's something that we will forever need to actively shake up. Our truth is in there. It's just hard to find. And I think it's always going to be hard to find, no matter how much work you've done on yourself. Just because societal pressures, constructs, media, it's so powerful, right? So my challenge to you is just to question all your definitions. Thank you for listening. Be well.